Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the next exciting episode of the Doctor Who DVD Disambiguation. So last time, of course, we wrapped up our look at the classic series. It's all over, man. It's all over. Now we're in that limbo period known as the wilderness years. Would there ever be any new Doctor Who on our screens again? Is it ever coming back? There were so many years of empty promises from the BBC. Oh yeah, it's coming back in some form. We're just, looking at options. And, there was talk of a movie. There was talk of, an animated series they were talking about doing. Yeah, I mean, there was so many different things sort of just throwing around, rumors and stuff. It was crazy. In the meantime, we had fans stepping up to the plate and doing some fantastic fan films and audio adventures and such to just kind of, help other fans whet their, sate their appetite for more new Doctor Who adventures. And, as we went from the 90s into the early 2000s, I mean, desktop video technology got better and better, so fans were actually able to produce fan productions, their own Doctor Who stories, with very similar production value to what the classic series had. In some cases, almost better. Actually, there's some pretty good ones out there. Yeah, so, but it was up in the air for a very long time, until 1996, 7 years after the classic series ended with a whimper, and with no official cancellation notice ever from the BBC, with a movie. Yes, Doctor Who the movie, also known as Doctor Who the Enemy Within. So not only did we get a new Doctor in the form of veteran film actor Paul McGann, excellent actor, fantastic choice for the Eighth Doctor, but it clearly tied into the new series as well, because we also had the Seventh Doctor come back to do the regeneration. How freaking cool was that? Plus, this was going to be an American-British co-production, which meant more money than Doctor Who had ever had for its production budget ever. This was going to be spectacular. And it was basically a pilot. It was a pilot for a new series of Doctor Who adventures co-produced by British and US television. This was going to be amazing. This was going to be the beginning of a whole new era for Doctor Who, the likes of which we had only been able to dream about before. So how did it go? Let's take a look today on the Multimedia Chronicles. Welcome back. Okay, so first up, let's take a look at the DVD release. There's been a couple of releases of this over the years. The only one we got in Region 2 land was the special edition. The reason being there was some licensed music in it that, for whatever reason, they just couldn't negotiate it for being released over here. They finally sorted it out, so we have Doctor Who the movie, the special edition. Now, one thing I gotta mention about this is one of the few cases of Doctor Who DVDs in which we are subject to PAL speed up. Now, this was originally aired on American television. It was primarily an American production, co-produced by the BBC, and it was produced in NTSC, like NTSC video, which is 30 frames per second. Now, here's the problem: PAL uses a slightly higher resolution than NTSC, but a slightly lower frame rate, specifically 25 frames per second. So in order to compensate and not have any stuttering or whatever in the video, whenever an NTSC production is converted to PAL for broadcast on PAL television, so we're talking standard definition era here, not high definition era, it's actually sped up by 4% in order to compensate for the difference in frame rate. Now, for whatever reason, whenever a PAL program is converted back to NTSC, that isn't required. Like, for some reason, it divides evenly the other way, but not this way, So going NTSC to PAL, you get that 4% speed up. So everything's pitched, like the audio's pitched a little bit higher, and everything's running a little bit faster than it would normally in its native NTSC format. But for some reason, going from PAL to NTSC, you don't have that issue, and it's able to convert smoothly. Like all of the Region 1 DVDs I have, originally PAL source, but in NTSC the speed is fine, the tempo is fine, the pitch is fine, everything is fine. We're all fine here now. How are you? But with Doctor Who the movie, it was an NTSC production, so when it was brought over to the UK, it had to go through that NTSC to PAL conversion process, and thus had the PAL speed-up issue. Now here's the problem. With the Region 1 release, we didn't get a native NTSC version. We had the NTSC to PAL conversion that was remastered over there. And then they took that PAL master and reconverted it back to NTSC, but without correcting the speed. So we have an NTSC release with the PAL speed-up issue. So it runs a little bit shorter than it should, and everything sounds... like for someone who's had a VHS copy of the original airing of Doctor Who the movie and has watched it countless times over the years, it's very frustrating for me to hear it with that PAL speed up issue. I mean, Paul McGann sounds like he's just inhaled some helium. Now, if you've heard any of the audio adventures with the Eighth Doctor, you know what he's supposed to sound like. So hearing him in the movie with that issue is annoying. Now, that said, if you feed it into something like VLC Player, you can actually adjust the speed. You knock it down to 96% so that it plays it at the correct speed, and make sure that the audio is unlocked to that so that it can, or locked to it, something like that. It's either locked or unlocked. So basically, so that it down pitches the pitch as well to the correct pitch, and then it's fine. But it's a little annoying to have to do that for that particular DVD. I do that with my PAL DVDs all the time when I watch them on the computer. Is I'll run them through VLC Player and then pitch them down so that and adjust the speed so that they play at the correct speed. But yeah, but it's annoying to have to do that. So anyway, it was frustrating that they didn't just use an NTSC master for the Region 1 release. It seemed like creating more work for themselves doing it that way. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, how was the movie? It's kind of hit and miss, to be honest. Paul McGann is excellent. I love that they got Sylvester McCoy back to do the regeneration. It is one of the cheapest deaths ever for a Doctor, however. He's basically exiting the TARDIS and gets gunned down by a gang of, like a Chinese street gang. And then taken to the hospital, and they try to perform surgery on him, but his physiology is different, and they end up killing him on the operating table. So then he regenerates in the morgue. Hilarious scene of a morgue attendant, by the way, played by Will Sasso from Mad TV. Yeah, he's absolutely hilarious as that morgue attendant who sees the Doctor in his freshly regenerated form and freaks out. But yeah, so there's a lot of fun moments in here. The Doctor has suddenly become very amorous towards his companion and kisses her a lot. You have Eric Roberts coming back as the Master. A bit of a few continuity gaffes here. The Master has his trial and is sentenced to execution on Skaro. Well, last we saw, 2 seasons prior, Skaro no longer exists. So, do they go back in time for the trial? And why would the Daleks want to have anything to do with that? Why the frick should they care about some Time Lord trial? Like, why didn't that happen on Gallifrey? Just saying. Anyway, yeah, and now apparently the Eye of Harmony, which we last saw was on Gallifrey, it's apparently now in the TARDIS for some reason. No idea why. Fan speculation has been, well, it's not the real Eye of Harmony, it's just linked to the Eye of Harmony, and that's part of the Time Lord's power, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, fine, whatever, I guess I can roll with that. But I found that really odd. The Doctor also says that he's now half human on his mother's side. That has since been retconned out of existence, thank God, because, I'm sorry, he's not Spock. He's the Doctor. He's 100% Gallifreyan. Done. Yeah, I mean, since then we have had human characters with Gallifrey, like with Time Lord characteristics, such as River Song, but, you know, at the time it just seemed like a lot of very clumsy stuff had sort of been thrown into the mix that just didn't quite, like, they're trying to do it as being connected to the old series, obviously, but at the same time there were certain things that just didn't quite jibe properly. So yeah, anyway, overall pretty fun. I've always had some issues with the theme music in this. Now, I love the idea of a full orchestral version of the theme music, and overall it's pretty good. John Debney did a pretty good job of it. Now, here's the thing. He was doing the theme entirely by ear, because there's no actual musical notation for the theme music. At least there wasn't at the time. There may be now. But at the time there wasn't, so he was doing it all by ear. And as a musician myself, he must have heard it wrong, because there's some problems with his version of the theme. Overall, it's quite good, but there's just something about it that doesn't quite play right for me, and it bugs me every time I hear it. I want to be like rocking out, like, yeah, orchestral version of the theme, and then it hits that part where it's like, that's wrong. That's just wrong, and it bugs me. So damn it. Don't do that. Alrighty, so anyway, what do we got here? This is actually a really nice set. Technical problems aside, and issues with the movie itself aside. We got nice 2-disc set. This is a very special edition. We got a whole bunch of archival extras, behind the scenes audition tapes, and all kinds of previews and cool stuff like that. Yeah, we got a couple of documentaries here. We got one called the 7-Year Hitch, which is a look back at the long quest to return Doctor Who to the screen. So this is basically the journey to this point where we finally got a new Doctor Who adventure on screen. Then we got a whole bunch of visual effects things. We got a big documentary about the wilderness years, how Doctor Who was kept alive between 1989 and 1996. So pretty cool. Now, I should mention a few other things, just kind of touching on the wilderness years here for a little bit. A few ways in which the show was kept alive. Novels. Big time novels. After the series was canceled, Virgin Publications started doing a series of Doctor Who New Adventures, which basically continued the series, continued the Seventh Doctor and Ace's adventures from the end of the series through, 100 or so books, however many they did. But they did a whole bunch of those. And then they started doing Missing Adventures, which were basically adventures featuring past Doctors that slotted in between existing stories. Now, the BBC eventually took over those books, and around 1996, actually around the time that this movie came out, because they wanted to do a series of Eighth Doctor adventures, so they started a whole new series of new adventures featuring the Eighth Doctor, and they also continued the past Doctor adventures with their own missing stories line, and the Seventh Doctor was migrated into that because he was no longer the current Doctor. The Doctor Who magazine, amazingly, continued during this whole era, and continues to this day. The Doctor Who magazine is probably the only thing that has remained consistent between the classic series and the current series. It has run continuously ever since, the Tom Baker era of the classic series up to today. It's still going today, published every month. Great stuff. And one of the things that they had for new adventures for Doctor Who fans was the ongoing comic strip adventures in the magazine. So that was great. So for a long time, the Seventh Doctor was in many ways the longest running Doctor, because he had the 3 seasons of the show, but he also had the ongoing comic strip adventures and the novels, which all continued his adventures. So after the movie, that was it. No more Seventh Doctor adventures. The Eighth Doctor was now the current Doctor, and I think the Eighth Doctor became the longest running Doctor in that respect, because he remained the current Doctor from 1996 all the way through until 2005, when the new series premiered. Now, other things that were done during that period. I mentioned fan films. There were a lot of fan films made during that period. There were also a lot of almost but not quite official films made by a couple of companies in particular. There's BBV, not BBC, but BBV, and Real Time Pictures, both of whom did a whole bunch of individual standalone short movies and some series as well that often featured classic monsters and classic characters, not the Doctor, but often companions to the Doctor coming back for different adventures. There was one featuring Sergeant Benton that was really good. There was one called Shakedown featuring the Sontarans, which was really good. I really liked that one, and that featured Carol Ann Ford and Jacqueline Pierce coming back as different characters, not as their Doctor Who characters. And then we have Downtime. Downtime is worthy of note because it's actually getting a DVD release, like an official DVD release. It looks like it's actually being migrated into official Doctor Who canon, which is pretty cool. Downtime features, Sarah Jane Smith, played by Elizabeth Sladen, Nicholas Courtney playing Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, and who the hell else? Someone else, I can't remember. But notable in that it actually introduces the character of Kate Lethbridge Stewart, the Brigadier's daughter, who is now a pretty major character in New Who. So yeah, but she actually appeared in what is essentially a fan film originally, but a fan film written by Mark Platt, the guy who wrote Ghostlight, and featuring several of the original series companions played by the original actors. So very, very cool stuff indeed. And it features the return of the Yeti, the first time that they had been seen since the Web of Fear. So very cool indeed. Oh, and also features Victoria, what's-her-face, Deborah Watling as Victoria, and the actor who played Professor Travers in the original Abominable Snowman and Web of Fear stories. He comes back as well. So all these original actors from the original series coming back to do this story. And I think that's really cool. And it's also one of the few films from that era, or movies from that era, that really got a little bit more exposure. Virgin Books actually did a novelization of it, written by Mark Platt as well, and put it in as part of their Missing Adventures story. So in a way, it's been considered a secondary canon for a very long time. The movie itself came out in 1995, so it actually predates this by 1 year. Yeah, so if you want to add it to your Doctor Who collection, put it in between Survival and this, and there you go. Continuity maintained. So pretty cool. And there was a second, there was a follow-up as well done in 2004, which funny enough predates the start of the new series by 1 year, called Deimos Rising, which was basically tied into the Demons, the Third Doctor story. No original actors appear in that one from the original series. However, the actress who played Kate Lethbridge Stewart in Downtime returns to reprise the role. The same actress does not play her in the new series, so I guess she regenerated. But yeah, still pretty cool that a character that originated in what is essentially a fairly high-end fan film has been integrated into official Doctor Who continuity. Now, last but most certainly not least, I should mention the Flash animated specials. There were quite a few of those done over the years, over the course of that 17-year stretch. I think the first one was Death Comes to Time, which was a pretty massive Seventh Doctor story. So it was done in this limited animation with Flash animation. Featured Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred again. Also had, what's his face? Jeeves and Wooster guy. Why can't I remember? You got Huey Laurie and Stan Laurel. No, wait a minute. And Stephen Fry. Stephen Fry, that's who it was. A bit of Fry and Laurie, that's who it was. Yeah, so anyway, you had Stephen Fry in it as a Time Lord. I always thought Stephen Fry would be great as the Doctor. I mean, come on. Who couldn't picture that? So anyway, we finally get to see Stephen Fry as a Time Lord, albeit in Flash animated form. Death Comes to Time was released. I'm just checking the time here. Death Comes to Time was released on audio, but we never actually got the full Flash animated version released in any official form, unfortunately. To be fair, I mean, it has the look of a very limited motion comic, but it would be nice to have the visual version of that on DVD in some form. But you can at least get it on CD. At least you used to be able to. I think it's long out of print now. We also, of course, had Shada, which was released on the Shada DVD. You need a Flash player in order to watch it, but it's there, so you can check that out. Then we also had Real Time, which was a Sixth Doctor adventure, which introduced not Iris Wildtime. What am I talking about? Anyway, I forget who it was. I'm not overly familiar with his audio adventures. I've only heard a few of them, but introduced a character that we later heard in the in the audio adventures. Actually, maybe she had already been introduced in the audio adventures at that point. I can't remember the exact timeline. But anyway, so Real Time is basically a Cyberman story featuring the Sixth Doctor in his blue outfit, which fans of the audios will know. And his it was the older companion who was she was never in the show. She was only in the audio adventures, but it was an older woman who was like a scientist and such, and very much the the Doctor's equal in a lot of ways, like intellectually. And they traveled together for quite a while in their in the audio adventures. But anyway, so it features her and a cracking Cyberman adventure. And sadly, that one's never been released either. I really wish it would. It would make a nice addition to the Sixth Doctor collection. But check that one out if you get the chance. It's called Real Time. And then finally, when was this? 2003. So a mere 2 years before the classic series, or the new series started, we got this. Scream of the Shalka, starring Richard E. Grant as, well, at the time they called him the Ninth Doctor. Now he's referred to as the Nth Doctor, and this is no longer considered part of official canon. But basically a much nicer animated, like they really refined the Flash animation. This is pretty much on par with the animated reconstructions that we've seen on some of the first and second Doctor adventures. Really, really good stuff. Really nice to look at, and it's really cool to see Richard E. Grant as kind of a take no crap kind of Doctor. We had seen Richard E. Grant briefly before. This is not on DVD, sadly, but in Curse of the Fatal Death, which was a comic relief special featuring Rowan Atkinson as the Doctor, and he blows through the rest of his regenerations pretty quick in this as well. So we have, this is just a really, we got Jonathan Pryce as the Master as well, just hamming it up. I always thought he would make a great Master, like if, they do it. But, yeah, so we got Jonathan Pryce, Julia Sawalha as his companion, Joanna Lumley, Richard E. Grant, Hugh Grant, and Jim Broadbent as the various incarnations of the Doctor. But really, really fun special. I wish we would get an official release of it over here. That'd be really nice. But yeah, so there was that comic relief special. When was that done? Anyway, that was done in 1999, and for a long time that was the only sort of official New Who on screen for a very long time. So 1993 we had Dimensions in Time, 1996 we had the movie, 2003 we had Scream of the Shalka, and then somewhere in between there we have the other Flash animated specials, and there you go. But it was at least nice to be seeing some Doctor Who stuff happening, and then finally in 2005 the series came back, good and proper, and it has not gone away since. And it's already been renewed for at least one more season. So, yeah, so at the very least we're going to get 10 full seasons of New Who. And I don't see it stopping after that. I mean, it's huge. It is just freaking huge right now. I mean, Doctor Who is bigger than it has ever been before. I see cute, hot, young girls watching Doctor Who and talking about it and getting excited about it. You don't see that. You never saw that when I was growing up. When I was growing up, anyone who watched Doctor Who was a social pariah and an outcast. I mean, that was just... you were considered the geek of all geeks, and women would stay far away. Now it's like, if you're a Doctor Who fan, you're cool. You're in their cool books, man. So, to be a teenager again. To be a teenager in this era, like of being, when Doctor Who was actually considered cool. I never thought I'd see the day when that sentence could be said truthfully. Wow. Anyway, there you go. So if you get these two here, Doctor Who the movie, Scream of the Shalka, and then Downtime when it comes out, you're all good. You have got absolutely everything released of the classic series of Doctor, well, assuming you've collected everything else up to this point, naturally. Alrighty, I need to run off to school and pick up my daughter. She likes Doctor Who too. Alrighty, that is it for the Doctor Who DVD Disambiguation for the time being. If you're wondering about, hey Sean, are you going to do the new series? Yes, eventually. Don't ask me when. I have no idea. Mainly because what you see behind me here, this is all I presently own of the new series. I've got the Matt Smith years, The Day of the Doctor Special Edition, Time of the Doctor Special Edition, Deep Breath, and Dark Water Death in Heaven double feature special edition. And that's it. That's all I've got. That's all I own of the new series. I've seen them all. I mean, I've watched them all, obviously, as they've aired. But that's all I own right now. So until I actually have the rest of them in some form, whether it be the original releases, which most of you know that I've been wanting for a while, or the newer releases, or maybe wait for the Blu-ray upscaled versions of the first 4 series. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah, but and I got to get the Sarah Jane Adventures, and I got to get Torchwood, and I got to get K9. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I still need before I can really properly do the disambiguation for that. Because it gets a little complicated with the new series, so I'm probably going to break it down year by year, just as I did with this one, just to kind of keep it as separate and simple as possible for everybody, because that's really the purpose of these disambiguations. Alrighty, well, I really just meant to sort of touch on the Wilderness Years, but I guess I kind of went nuts and just couldn't resist talking about it. This isn't meant to be a definitive history of Doctor Who. This is really just meant to be about the DVD releases, but I guess it helps to be armed with more knowledge going in, and just knowing that even though there may not be a lot of official stories from this particular piece of the era, there's a lot of secondary media out there that you can enjoy to see what stories were out there, to kind of fill in that 17-year gap between the end of the old series and the beginning of the new. Alrighty. I'd just like to take a moment to thank my Patreon sponsors. Thank you, Patreon sponsors. You guys and gals are awesome. Special, big, extra, special, super duper, special thanks and specialness to my 2 highest level sponsors, namely Kyle Pellegrini and Get Your Gorgeous On, the awesome EMAG maintained by Michelle O'Toole and Simon Hedger. Thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate the support. Alrighty, that is it from me to you for now. So until next time, thanks for watching, and sayonara. Wearing a bit thin. Yes, that's a little better, I think. Sorry, I was reviewing the footage from the last segment there, the one that you just watched, and realized, wow, did I ever miss a lot of stuff, and I was forgetting things, and I was messing things up, and the old brain just wasn't what it used to be, so I mean, there was no other choice. I had to regenerate. So, hello, it's me, again. I decided to keep my old face because, you know, I'm just a real narcissist that way. Alright, so, I realized that I forgot to mention a few things. I figured, you know, if we're going to talk about the Wilderness Years, even though this is the DVD disambiguation, but I mean, I talked about a whole bunch of other stuff from the Wilderness Years that is not available on DVD, so we might as well just go for broke and talk about all the major stuff that took place during that long, long drought of no new Who on TV. Well, 3 years prior to the 1996 movie, I can't believe I forgot to mention this one. This was a pretty big deal at the time. 1993, the 30th anniversary of Doctor Who. For the first time since the 20th anniversary, well, I guess since the first time since 1985, technically, but the first time since the 20th anniversary, we had like a big multi-Doctor anniversary event story. Now, the 25th anniversary story, as we talked about before, wasn't really anything spectacular or special. It was just kind of another adventure with the Doctor, with some 25 years stuff thrown into it. But really, we know the proper 25th anniversary story was Remembrance of the Daleks. Well, for the 30th anniversary, they wanted to do something big. However, Doctor Who had been off the air for 4 years. So this was really the first actual, proper, official BBC-produced Doctor Who that we had since the show disappeared. So, pretty cool. So what was it? Well, it was this. This is the Radio Times cover that promoted it. Dimensions in Time. featuring all the surviving Doctors. You got John Pertwee, Tom Baker actually came back for this one, Peter Davison, Colin Baker, and Sylvester McCoy, as well as pretty much all the surviving companions, a whole slew of monsters. You had the Ronnie as the main villain of the story, and it was a crossover with EastEnders for some reason. And not only that, but as you can see from the cover, it was in 3D. Yeah, 3D on TV. How was that even possible in 1993? Well, if you're thinking about it being like Blu-ray 3D or Real D, it wasn't that kind of 3D. No, this was like old school 3D TV. It wasn't the red and blue kind either. No, this was a process called Pulfric 3D, which I'm going to talk about in some MMC Retro episodes at some point, but basically what it involved was having a pair of 3D glasses with a single dark lens, and that lens would go over one eye. Now, when you're watching something on a standard definition interlaced television screen, what that dark lens does is it actually blocks out what that eye sees by one scan line. See, normally an NTSC or a PAL image is made up of several scan lines or interlaced fields. So PAL, you have 50 fields interlaced to make 25 frames per second. NTSC, you have 60 fields interlaced to make 30 frames per second. So it's like TVs couldn't scan the image fast enough to give you a progressive scan image like we have nowadays with high def. So to give you higher resolution, they would scan like all the even lines first and then all the odd lines first, 60 or 50 times a second to create the illusion of a full frame, 30 or 25 frames per second. So basically what this Pulfric system did was it took advantage of that. It took advantage of that limitation of the technology and made it so that your one eye would be slightly delayed over what the other would see. So what ended up happening was anything that was panning across the screen, like panning left or right, you would get this depth of field effect, which was really cool. I actually did a whole bunch of experiments with it back in the early 90s, just with my camcorder, like filming out the side of a car and stuff like that. And it really works. It works really well. For some reason, it didn't work with up and down, something to do with the way, I guess because that's how the scan lines are interlaced, it kind of doesn't work that way. But left and right, it works really well. So basically what you had is this Doctor Who special with this Pulfric system being used. So the camera is constantly in motion and panning across things, and things are moving, and visually it's very fun, and there's a lot going on, a lot to see. But honestly, the story was virtually non-existent. I mean, it just seemed like it wasn't a full episode. It wasn't like a full mini-series or movie or anything like that. It wasn't anything on the scale of the 5 Doctors in that respect. It was basically just a pair of shorts that were about 7 minutes each, something like that. The total running time of the entire thing is about 15 minutes, and it was just part of this. It was shown as a part of this other variety show, and yeah. Now, because of some kind of rights entanglements with it, we're probably never, ever going to see it on DVD. You can find it on YouTube, however. I'll see if I can find some links for you, and I'll throw them into the description just for fun, so you can at least check it out. The 3D effect probably won't work too well on your computer screens, but I don't know. I managed to get some of that type of 3D to work on a progressive scan TV, so maybe it's not entirely dependent on the interlacing, but it does seem to work better on an interlaced display. So yeah, and then the other big thing I forgot to mention, Big Finish audio adventures. Holy crap. Okay, so we had the the comics and the magazine, and we had the Flash animated stuff, and we had the New Adventures novels and the Missing Adventures novels, and then the BBC took over and did their own range of novels. But we also had Big Finish audio started during that Wilderness Years period, and is still going to this day. Basically, they started off doing adventures featuring the 5th, 6th, and 7th Doctors, and then the 8th Doctor, Paul McGann, came on board, and he started doing New Adventures, which was a really big deal at the time, because up until that point, all we had of his Doctor was the movie, and that was that. So his adventures pick up right where the movie left off and continue the adventures of the 8th Doctor. And an interesting footnote to that, around the time of the 50th anniversary, there was a short, like a webisode called Night of the Doctor, which featured the return of Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor, And with some of the dialogue that he says in that, he acknowledges companions that his Doctor traveled with in the audio adventures, which effectively made those audio adventures canon. Now, some fans took that to mean that now all the audio adventures are canon. Other fans take it to mean that only the 8th Doctors are officially canon. The others, you know, it's up to you whether you want to include them or not. I like to think of it as all the audio adventures are now canon, because that just means we get even more with the classic Doctors. You know, we get, and especially, you know, the 6th Doctor has really fared well on audio after how he got shafted in the televised series. But, yeah, so amazing stuff. And then finally, we also had this, Doctor Who, The Ultimate Adventure. Yes, which was a stage play that initially starred Jon Pertwee as the Doctor, and then on alternate nights, on other nights, Colin Baker would play the Doctor in that. So this was a big, you know, production stage play, lots of special effects and such. You can find bootleg videos of it floating around. They did do an audio version of it, which was essentially a recreation of the story in audio adventure form by Big Finish for, or maybe it was BBC, I can't remember. But anyway, they did an audio adaptation of it featuring Colin Baker as the Doctor, because it was done long after Jon Pertwee had passed away. Speaking of Jon Pertwee on audio, however, there was a couple of Jon Pertwee audio adventures done around that time as well. We had, what was it, The Ghosts of End Space, and I can't remember that one. Yeah, so we had 2 audio adventures with the 3rd Doctor. One was actually done quite some time earlier than the other. The other, however, I think it was The Ghost of End Space, was done in like 1996, which would have been around the same time as the TV movie. And yeah, pretty cool stuff to hear the 3rd Doctor back in action with a lot of his co-stars from the time as well. So very cool stuff. And all of those have of course been released on CD. Now, we've never had any kind of video or DVD release of the Ultimate Adventure stage play. There's been a few Doctor Who stage plays over the years, actually. There have been audio adaptations of them done by Big Finish that basically bring them to life again, because there's no existing recordings of them, sadly. But yeah, pretty cool stuff. So, man, oh, and of course, I think I mentioned earlier, Doctor Who magazine continued running all throughout the Wilderness years. It's funny, one of these days I'm going to do a video about my Doctor Who magazine collection. Now, I don't have anywhere near all of them. I just got like a good chunk from when I was really hardcore into collecting them. I basically got a bunch from the 80s and 90s. But I was looking through them again recently, actually, I guess the year of the 50th anniversary, and I posted pictures of some of them up on the Facebook page. If you want to check that out, I actually have a Doctor Who album there that you can take a look at, and see various things from my Doctor Who collection over the years. It's by no means complete or definitive, but you know, you can get a look at some cool things on there. But looking through the magazines again, I realized the vast majority of Doctor Who magazines that I have are from after the show was canceled. It's just like, it amazes me that it was like the one thing out of everything that continued uninterrupted during that entire period. So think of that. Think of that for a second here. Okay, so we had Doctor Who magazine that started in the late 70s, ran all the way through to the cancellation of the show, and then kept going. So for that whole 17-year stretch between the end of the classic series and the beginning of the new series, Doctor Who magazine kept going for that whole time. That is freaking huge. That is huge. You know, and that only shows what staying power Doctor Who had. I mean, let's just sum up here. So we had the magazine, we had the comic strips, also getting reprints and such. We had the novels of the new adventures. We had the missing adventures. We had the audio adventures. We had the stage play. We had Dimensions in Time thrown into the mix, 30th anniversary celebration. We had Curse of the Fatal Death, the comedy relief special, which actually ran longer than Dimensions in Time, which is kind of funny. We had all the Flash animated things. All the lack of Doctor Who on our television screen, there sure was a lot of Doctor Who out there. In fact, I'd even go so far as to say, oh, and we had all the fan films too, fan films and fan audios. There's so many of them. It was crazy. Nicholas Briggs, who is now the voice of the Daleks and the Cybermen, and one of the head writers and performers and producers at Big Finish Audio, he started doing fan films and stuff like that. He did a series called Mythmakers, which was interviews with Doctor Who stars, both actors who play the Doctor and the companions and monsters and other behind-the-scenes people. He did a whole series of them, released them all on VHS. And, yeah, I mean, all of that stemmed out of the Wilderness years. And it just blows me away for the lack of Who that was on our screens. There was no shortage of Doctor Who material about it. But I was going to say, like, that only shows the staying power of this franchise. It is huge. The fans are so fiercely dedicated to it. And you have no idea what it was like being a fan and waiting year after year for some news of the revival of the series. And when it finally happened, it was like, my God, all the waiting actually paid off. It actually happened. It actually came back. And that was amazing. But we kept it alive. We kept it alive. And obviously it remained a profitable franchise all that year because there just continued to be all of this material being produced. Quite frankly, as a fan myself, I don't know what the BBC was waiting for so long. I mean, clearly they were making gobs of money off the franchise. What took them so long to bring it back to our screens? I don't know. Anyway, it's back now, so the waiting paid off. Alrighty, that is it for the Doctor Who DVD Disambiguation, ladies and gentlemen. Next time, who knows? Who knows? We'll see what the future brings, but until then, you'll just have to wait and see. I mean, there's certainly still quite a lot I can do with the classic series. I was talking about before doing individual reviews of each of the DVDs, and that's definitely something you can expect at some point in the not-too-distant future. Just got to find the time to sit down and rewatch them. Yeah, so we'll see you next time. Till then, thanks for watching, and sayonara.